Alright, it's a video I meant to do a day or two ago, but haven't got around to it. Anyway, response video, Mr. Cropper, regarding a video he did to Matt, sort of on capitalism, this one little part of it anyway.
One of the most morally reprehensible and irresponsible and disgusting things I can imagine anyone saying. It says that friendship becomes more difficult or possibly impossible when every individual has private property. He thinks.
Yeah, well, that's probably taking it to an extreme. But let's just say one of the reprehensible things would be makes friendship really difficult is when some little putz, pops out of a vagina and says, "I'm better than you because my parents were, more capable of acquiring wealth than you, and so I'm entitled, and you're not entitled." And so I'm going to live better. I'm going to even own you in the future. Yeah, that's very unfriendly. It's really hard to be friendly, with this idea that, oh, I owe you money the day I'm born. It's kind of unfriendly when somebody says you owe me $200,000, on the day you're born, and they don't have any paperwork that demonstrates that they really earned that ownership. They could be the third or fourth or fifth generation inheriting it, and they had nothing to do with the actual production of any value. They're just saying, "I'm better than you." I mean, it's a pretty unfriendly statement to say, I'm entitled and you're not.
So that makes friendship impossible or more difficult.
Because it's your property.
Because it's your property.
Yeah, because like I said, especially if you didn't earn it, if you inherited it, okay? And you're saying that, like I said, you're entitled, and somebody else isn't entitled. So, I mean, how is that? You can't, as soon as you impose an unfairness on another human being, that's a demonstration of a pretty unfair act and an unfriendly act. You can't really separate those two. No one conceives of the idea of friendship as being, oh yeah, that's right, that guy who treats me unfairly, he's my friend. I mean, that's really, people try to avoid those kind of friends.
That separates you from others in some ultimate way, unless you can share so you own nothing individually.
Yeah, like I said, that's going to an extreme that I think is a little preposterous, but whatever. What you should own is what you have really, truly earned by some kind of rational standard. That is, you actually did something productive. Not that you figured out how to steal money out of old ladies as they walk down the sidewalk, to sneak it out of their little purses or something, but I mean real productive work, real productive contribution to society. Then yeah, maybe you deserve and you earn a little bit of to walk on the less muddier ground. But other than that, in our subcultures anyway, in our capitalism, there's no evidence of this earning thing. It's not there.
It says. Well, then there's this barrier to friendship. Well, I'll just drop some real-world evidence in real quick. It is in capitalist societies that people share.
Yeah, like China. That's a capitalist country, right? It's got billionaires driving down the streets. So they share a lot over there in China, right? I mean, come on.
Socialist and communist societies, where it is just an orgy of bloodletting and getting what you can from the next guy and demanding bribes every step of the way if you've got the
power. Oh, right. There's none of that going on here. I mean, there's no subtle or even overt bribery and extortion and exploitation. None of that happens in this culture. Right.
Power to demand a bribe. I mean, you have to bribe your way. You don't anymore. Soviet Union's fallen apart. But you used to have to bribe your way into a restaurant.
And then why would the Soviet Union be a relevant argument? Again, that wasn't a very good socialist experiment, was it? Statistically, it was quite obvious that a small minority of the population controlled a huge amount of the wealth of the nation. So that's not exactly a socialist blueprint, is it? No, that's a capitalist blueprint. So what all you're doing is comparing methodically, maniacally more insidious capitalism against more brutal, crude, inefficient capitalism. But you're not comparing any. You're not you're not comparing. You're not making an honest comparison with what is theoretically possible. You're just making a cheap comparison with the failed experiments that people have conducted in the last couple hundred years.
The guy would unlock the door and let you in if you had some rubles for him. You had to bribe. You're still in India today. You have to bribe.
Yeah, well, why does that have to have anything to do with less capitalism? So the less capitalism you have, the less bribery there is. So you either give the elite a free ride, and you exploit the desperate completely and entirely. You just take complete advantage of any kind of surpluses in labor, because that's obviously the people's fault, right? It's my fault that my parents had kids, right? Asshole.
Some official or 5 officials or 20 officials to get a driver's license or whatever else, or you can go through the government and actually do it. But why do it when you can bribe for cheaper and quicker?
Right, and we have the same kind of system. There's lots of laws that the rich can get around because they can pay a little extra money to get around them.
That is what you get when everyone shares everything in the democratic socialism of India.
Right, or else you get something like we have, where all the celebrities, there's been 3 or 4 of them, guilty as hell of murder, get away with it because they got enough money to buy. They got enough money to buy some legal hardware that'll screw the jury, and allow them to break the law. That's your system. Money has rights, and poverty has none.
Soviet Russia. And what about everyone in North Korea sharing everything, where people lie on the street and starve to death because there's
Again, you want to keep making comparisons. North Korea doesn't look very socialist to me. The emperors and the rest of it still seem to live pretty well, while the people live like shit. So you show me where that's a socialist principle being implemented.
On the food. Is that when you do away with private property, people share more? What an idiot. What an irresponsible idiot.
Yeah, well, you're an irresponsible idiot because you don't care about the truth and the facts. Now, what would North Korea be? Let's say if we ended the embargoes and let's ended the sanctions and we allowed North Korea to compete like every other country. The same with Cuba. If we got rid of our sanctions, we allowed American tourists to go spend tons of money down there. Okay, allowed them to sell their cigars and whatever products they can make on the free market. What's your speculation how that would make Cuba a bigger failure? I don't think so, and I think you know fucking better. But you don't care about the truth. It's because it's manipulating an argument, because you want to defend something so desperately you have to use desperate rhetoric.
You just say that kind of crap. That's morally reprehensible of it.
Yeah, well, what is it when you basically lie? You just lied, basically. I mean, North Korea isn't an example, a blueprint example of a socialist economy and a free market. You know that, right? It's not competing equally with the rest of the world.
In capitalist societies, where people build supermarkets that anyone can walk into any time of the day, 24/7.
Yeah, and that's where we have huge waste and spam and the rest of this stuff. We've been stealing money from China for decades, and the rest of our economy is living off of that thieved money, that thieved productivity. And that game's going to be over soon because the Chinese have figured out how to beat their own people. Okay, they don't need us middlemen anymore to get their products onto our market. They can do it themselves, and so now our game is going to be over. And we're going to see how our real capitalism, when we don't have anybody to exploit, whether we have anything at all here.
Violate the place or something, they'll call the police, but otherwise you're welcome to pay for something and walk out. You don't have to have a shirt and a tie. You do have to have a shirt on, but you don't have to be well dressed or anything. This is where people share what they have in the West, not in places where they do.
Yeah, right. Again, they share what? The people doing most of the work they get a tiny percentage of the productive reward for that work. 8,000 households control as much wealth as the bottom 60 million Americans. That's just a bullshit scenario.
Away with private property, because then everyone hates everyone, and everyone is the despiser of everyone else who has possibly more property than him, because no one's allowed to have their own property.
Yeah, well, wait till the unemployment rate keeps increasing, and when we have no productive work to do in this country because no labor, no capitalist dollar will invest in an American worker because they can get a cheaper worker someplace else. And wait till that scenario keeps building itself up and our deficits keep increasing. You're going to see a lot of fucking unfriendliness here.
So he's got it exactly backwards, and he's absolutely ignorant of reality, which a little more evidence would do him well here.
Yeah, well, you need a little more evidence. Like I said, what happened in France, okay? The king, they ended up lopping off a lot of heads because it was very unfriendly. The aristos, the pompous and the arrogant, riding over the people because they had ownership tickets. Ownership tickets they never had to earn. They just acquired them. They just inherited their nobility, and that meant they owned somebody else's house, and they owned their farm, and they owned their property, and they owned their productive work, okay, and they closed them out of the system. And we have the same thing happening right now, and it's very unfriendly.